Just hang out and chat, say hi to
Broadcast is live.
And I just have to figure out if
it's live. I can tell you that.
Yeah, we're live. We're starting a few minutes early just to let everyone get the message.
Hey, folks.
Just get the message saying, hey, we're live. So it'll, usually takes people a few minutes. So, G's here already. Look at him go.
OG Devin. How's it going?
How is it going, OG? We'd like to have him back on again sometime. Good guy. Real nice guy. So, yeah, we're just kind of him hauling around for a few minutes as we hello, Lead Magnet. There's a great
How's
name.
it going?
Wow, that's a really good one. I like that. That is a great name. Awesome. Wow. Yeah, we are not officially starting for just a few more minutes here, usually about 4 or so. We're just starting it a little bit early so that way the YouTube will get around to posting everything, sending out the messages and stuff. So
we are at this point familiar with whatever shenanigans YouTube has to throw at us.
Yeah, that's it.
I had a video vanish, for example. And I mean, I won't swear that I didn't accidentally delete it or something like that, but I know it was up. And it vanished in the midst of whatever. And weird things happen sometimes. So it's re-uploaded now. It's all good.
You keep them then for a while after you upload?
Well, I didn't used to because their files are huge. And I didn't have an extra hard drive just to store old videos. Now I actually have 10 terabytes of hard 10 gigs. Ha ha.
10 gig. Wow,
it gets used up fast. I have 10 terabytes of hard drive space now, specifically, and like 7.5 of it is dedicated to just video space for old videos. So I don't have to get rid of anything anytime soon.
Good. Yeah, I used to keep them, and then it got to the point where it's like, I don't have room on my hard drive. I'm just going to delete everything. So. Guys, we're not actually started yet. Just if you're joining us, just to let you know, we're just kind of letting everyone get the message from YouTube that we're going live. So we'll start here in just a couple minutes. Just let everyone get a chance to come in and get something to drink and just get ready to hang out with their good friend Ardwulf. So
how's it going? I have put it on Twitter as well.
Oh, okay, awesome. So
So Twitter is my primary social media outlet now, just because I feel like I have better control over the nonsense that I have to put up with. So that may be just me. I mean, maybe I'm just being luckier on Twitter than elsewhere, but I am far more active there than anywhere else. And there's a decent Wargame community on Twitter as well. So not as big as there is on Facebook.
I might have to just bite the bullet and add a Twitter account as well. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a huge social media guy. I figure, there's not much difference between 5 people showing up and 105. I mean, you just have more idiots that show up and try to post nasty messages in the comments, and then you got to spend time deleting them and everything else. So
it happens. I've had to spend, it's irritating when it occurs, but I've had to spend probably surprisingly little time dealing with knuckleheads. I won't say never, because that would not be true, but it's not really that bad. I mean, we have a small community overall, right? So it's easier to police a small community than a big community. If you're playing some popular video game, whatever that might be right now, and you had 20,000 people watching, which could happen, right? I mean, you have to have a team of moderators just to moderate the chat, and neither of us is doing that in this hobby.
I got a few moderators. I gave a few people some wrenches.
I did too.
Tony Board Life is one of my moderators. Rough Swordsman, one of my moderators. So
both of them are running fantastic YouTube channels, and I imagine everybody that's watching is already subscribed to both of them, and if not, they should be.
Let's hope so. I mean, we're, as you've already said, we're a small community. I try to support everyone, and that's part of our wargaming community. Just try to get as much information out there for everyone to enjoy. There's a few people that shows up. So Rough Swordsman.
This is your fault. No, it was Wardrobe, actually. Never mind. It's not your fault. Your fault is the fact that I want to play the Doolittle Raid now. Thinking about it. I've been trying to get that to the table for ages.
All right, so we started just a few minutes early just to let everyone know that we were getting ready to go live, and we'll go ahead and get things started and get things rolling, and then that way if this will be uploaded to YouTube later, if you want to go back and watch the beginning, you can go ahead. But we are here today to talk with Farnley, good friend, wargamer extraordinaire, and someone that I got this close to meeting, I'm sure.
And then you moved
this close. Ardwulf Lair. So welcome.
To enjoy your questionably better weather in Florida. It's really nice here right now, actually.
Yeah, that's we had really nice weather last week. It was low humidity and in the 80s, and it was great. And then to this week, it's back up into the 90s with high humidity, and it's just like, oh my God, why do I put up with this?
Yeah, I've been in what part of Florida are you in?
Just south of Tampa. On the east, on the west.
Yeah, that's the pestilential swamp part of Florida, I'm afraid. My great grandfather is buried in Tampa. We visited his grave around 1985 or so. So I had family there at one point, but it's not the pleasant climate part of Florida, I think.
Florida is great, except for July, August, and September, and then a little bit of October. There's about 3 months it just gets every day, where it's just so hot and steamy. But, unless you live in California, you're going to have 3 months of cold, or you're going to have 3 months of hot, or whatever. So
that's true.
It just depends on what you want to do. I mean, I can always go to the beach.
Or not leave the house and stay in the air.
Well, I mean, that's the two choices: is not leave the house, or when you go out, you go someplace, cool where you're swimming or enjoying time. So, anyways, for those of you who don't know, and the reason we got into this discussion is because Ardwulf probably lives less than 20 minutes from where I used to live, and before I moved down here to Florida. So he's a big Columbus, Ohio gamer now. So I lived on the east side of Columbus.
I'm right downtown at the moment, but I was in Whitehall.
Okay.
So east side.
Yeah. My wife was a teacher at Reynoldsburg for 30 years. So.
Okay. Yeah, actually my wife was the theater director for Reynoldsburg, one of the two Reynoldsburg high schools, for a year.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it's such a small world. It's like, I had a feeling, I moved away. And if I wouldn't have moved away, I'm sure we would have eventually got to chance to play. In fact, I was going to even come back to Buckeye Game Fest this year until they, canceled.
So you're going to save a few dollars on those travel plans.
Yeah.
So we do have, I don't have to tell you actually, but for the benefit of folks watching, Buckeye Game Fest is run by the Columbus Area Board. Well, it's not technically anymore run by the Columbus Area Board Game Society, but it's a close cooperation, right? And it's a 4-day general Thursday through Sunday game festival that focuses on board games. It does a lot of really amazing board game content. However, there is also what is called the War Room, which opens instead of Thursday, starts on Monday. So we have that the war gamers have to themselves, and therefore can set up an enormous whatever and play it all week, which is pretty fantastic. Last year, what did we do last year? We did OCS last year. There's always OCS. There's always Labatt of some kind, either Labatt or Battles of the Age of Reason type of thing. Usually there's something else big too. The year before it was a big game of the GTS Market Garden.
Yeah.
The Devil's Cauldron and Where Eagles Dare, which I didn't get to play in, but mostly with the same people. But I did get to play it at Winterfest this past February. So,
yeah,
which
I was a cabbie for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I really miss it. People, the club,
Mm-hmm.
gaming, everything. Just you don't realize what you have until it's gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you are Central Ohio located, I would look up Columbus Area Board Gaming Society and definitely, give it a whirl. You can go over there. Your first visit's free.
Well, not right now.
Oh,
but,
true.
But yeah.
They're not having meetings right now. But when when things get back to normal, over there, you get your first visit for free, which is what I did. And then I was hooked. And then I was a regular member for, like I said, many, many years. So it's really good.
Now, as far as nowadays, there used to be more wargaming occurring at CAB's meetings routinely. It still happens, and the people are still there, but you kind of have to have, made an arrangement to play a war game there, unless it's, your Twilight Struggle or coin. There's usually a coin game that still runs. I've gotten into random pop-up coin games at meetings in the last year, for example. Well, not in the last 6 months, but I think last time I went was around February, something like that. And there was a pop-up game of Falling Sky at the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, they average, when I was there, they averaged over 100, 115 every meeting. So, I mean, you could hopefully find somebody to play. Wargaming kind of dipping down as some of the older gentlemen move on or just don't have time for it or can't make every meeting or whatever. Yeah. But
and a couple guys have passed away. To be frank,
I didn't want to say that, but I did know that a couple of them had passed away as well.
But
a couple of them were really good friends of mine back in the day.
The wargaming is still happening, though. It's largely just moved. People also complain about a big convention like Origins and presumably Gen Con, although I haven't been to Gen Con in years, so I can't really verify this. About there's no wargaming at Origins anymore, which is not really true. It's just kind of lost in what is now an enormous event. And it's no longer like a highlight of the event. But a lot of the wargaming convention activity has flowed out to wargaming specific events like WBC or Winterfest or Consum World Expo or the various publisher company events like the GMT weekends at the warehouse, and there's a GMT East event that's in New York, the Compass Expo, the Multi-Man Winter Offensive, events like that. And there's a lot of those events. So, I mean, you can, and I did last year, I went to a ton of events last year. I was,
I was just saying, you're within 6 hours of 8 to 10 really good events.
Yes, easily. It's about six. Winter Offensive is about 6 hours away. Compass's event in Connecticut was 8 or 9, and the weather was not cooperative when we went, so it was a fairly terrible drive. On the way home, not so much on the way there.
Right. And the WBC is only
3 hours away, something like that.
I was going to say 3 to 4, probably 4 hours or so. Anyways, I mean, there's just really a lot of good wargaming events up there that just so far away down here. And I haven't actually been back since we moved down here, and every year I threaten to go up there, and this year I was going to, but just with everything canceled, it's just
I had plans this year too for WBC and maybe even Consum World, and I mean on the plus side, I have saved a decent amount of money by all of these events being canceled.
I mean, you got Origins, you got Gen Con. I mean, you're talking $300 or $400 between those and your registration fee and everything else.
I haven't gotten out of an Origins having spent only $400 in decades, and it's literally I could walk out the door, walk down to the corner, and walk for about 15 minutes, and I would be at Origins. Right. So it's not like I have to spend hotel space or anything like that. All my money goes to Enterprise games, and usually Decision gets some too.
Well, the number one reason you're on this week is because we had Tony's Board Life. We had Rough Swordsman Wargamer. They got demoted down. And you want to know why they got demoted down?
Why is that?
Because their bookshelves looked like crap.
Uh-oh.
Your bookshelf looks like a professional bookshelf. So
Tony
and Ruff, if you're watching, look at his bookshelf, look at your bookshelf, and when you can get your bookshelf to look like his, then I'll let you back on.
Well, it's sometimes accused of being OCD about this hobby. So I know it's hard to believe, but people have said hurtful things like that in the past.
It's very nice. I really like it. It's looks professional. Looks like you spent a few minutes before the show making it look like you're a neat and organized person, which I think you are anyways. But
all the disarray is off camera. So
that's what I like to hear. Oh, look at Rough Swordsman. I've tidied it up. No. Unless it looks like his, you're out. That's as simple as it goes. Tony, he's still working on it. Weeks, man. What are you doing? Last week he told us, this is what he told me last week, last interview. Go watch it. He said, I'm going to tidy up my bookshelf this week, and I'm going to put some coin videos out. We ain't got either of them.
No coin videos, huh? Oh.
No. He started, I will say he started doing the Rock of the Main video.
Yes, so, and I haven't had a chance to watch that yet, actually. That's another SCS.
I'm going to postpone that and did my coin games that I've been asking for 3 months now. So sooner or later, I'll get around to it. So
at some point, I got coin games in the pipeline as well. I've got about 5 of them, at least 2 of which I want to do video on, and it's things get pushed to the background for real life things and for just channel schedule things. Obviously, the realities of being a content creator in any field changed dramatically, in the early part of the year, where suddenly people were bored to death, and gamers were not able to play face-to-face gaming anymore. At least most of them didn't, and so we switched to online. And it's definitely changed a lot about what I have going up on the channel, right?
Yeah,
we've done a lot of live play type stuff, and
you did a great video last night on how to use Vassal.
So that was super interesting, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about being approached by Georgetown University to help their wargaming program. They have a wargaming program. And bear in mind, they're in DC. They a lot of talent flows from Georgetown to the defense industry, and that's why. But to have been approached by them to help out with that was something else, right? It's like,
yeah, absolutely, it's great.
Yeah. So and it was overdue, because my last video about how to use Vassal was like 5 years ago,
right. So
dramatically out of date.
Well, that's how it goes. Every couple of years, there's all these new updates and changes that I learned a couple things, and from you guys, and I use Vassal pretty regularly.
I learned something last night from the chat. Actually, there's a control scroll wheel now actually scrolls the map in and out. That's brand new in the last version or 2 of the Vassal engine. So we're all constantly learning stuff, right? This is about a journey of to sound cheesy about it. This is a journey of self-discovery, right? You're learning about history, you're learning about yourself, you're learning about other people by participating in this hobby. So,
well, it was really good. I hope a lot of people go watch it and view it, and I think hopefully it'll inspire some people to actually give Vassal a try.
Hopefully.
I did post some messages and some questions on our war group about, which do people prefer, watching someone actually live play with counters and dice and everything, or watching it on Vassal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really surprised that I would say about 70-75% of the people preferred watching with actual counters and dice as opposed to watching Vassal, which is really, I think, shows you where our gaming community is in the process of evolution.
Yes.
When you watch people play on Vassal, you have the whole screen there. You can see the counters crisp and clean. When you have a camera that's mounted 3 or 4 feet above the map, and you're moving counters around, people can't see. And this, you move the camera down and every counter you're moving. And I thought, it just seems to me like the wargaming evolution of people haven't really expanded to what they're comfortable with, I guess is the best way I can say that.
And I'll be honest, I have a preference for physical components. However, filming wargaming video with physical components presents photographic challenges that you don't have when you're using Vassal, because you just have a screen. It's all digital to begin with. You don't have to worry. Maybe you have to zoom in or zoom out or pan up or pan down or whatever, but it's easy to deal with. It's easy for the screen to be clear as long as you're kind of paying attention. Whereas with a physical camera, sometimes, the lighting's bad or you have glare or other things like that get in the way. So sure, I'll say I'd rather see physical components, but in so many ways, Vassal eases the hurdles that you have to photographing and filming play of war games, which is, and we haven't even talked about the fact that you don't have to physically set the pieces up. You don't have to physically set the pieces down. You don't have to physically leave the thing set up for a month at a time or a year at a time or whatever it's going to be, right? Yeah. So, we have played games locally here that took 1.5 years to play, right? I don't have to deal with that with Vassal. So I'm completely in favor of physical components, but Vassal's very attractive for those reasons as well.
Yeah, I think for evolutions of games, wargamers are behind all other. I think Euro gamers have advanced more. I think regular board gaming has advanced more. Those kind of people, as opposed to war gamers who are ingrained with the counters on the map, with the rule book, with the the massive amounts of counters, and just that's what they're used to, and that's what they're used to seeing, and that's what they're used to dealing with. So they like watching other people deal with it. But as you said, you got lighting conditions, you got glare, you have to move your camera around, you can't focus in on everything. Vassal is far, far superior. Although I find that it's just not as viewed by the viewers or as accepted by the viewers.
And it's, like I said, it's a lot easier to deal with from the standpoint of the content creator to work with Vassal. And it's, from the viewer standpoint, and I also prefer physical components from the viewer standpoint. But again, then we have some issues. Not to call it there's certain YouTubers who game in very poorly lit rooms, for example, and who are playing with physical components, and they're hard to read.
Thanks for calling me out.
You have no excuse. You're in Florida.
I appreciate it. You're calling me out in front of everybody.
You're in Florida. It's always sunny in Florida. Remember?
Yeah, that's
the sunshine state.
You can see I've got this huge light behind me. And when the sun goes down, then I don't have enough light in this room to light up anything. So I just, lighting is a huge issue. You have maps that don't lay flat. So what do you got to do? You got to put plexiglass on it. All that does is attract every glare that you can find, every angle. Yeah. It's always in the wrong spot. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and the the glare resistant plexiglass is not that good. So I experimented with it. I actually ordered industrial samples of glare resistant plexiglass, and none of them were particularly helpful or good. So I'm now experimenting with actual lighting. The little thing up here you can see is one of the new lights that I just got earlier in the week, or last week. So and I think it helps because it's given me better lighting positioning. It's all about lighting positioning, and I'm going to get some reflectors and stuff like that. So it's an ongoing process, right? I'm not a professional photographer or videographer either, so I'm learning all this stuff as I go.
Yeah, I mean, the people that don't live stream, they don't understand the hassle the people that do it go through. Mm-hmm. So when you see someone that's really, really good, and I give Rough Swordsman and Tony's Board Life, I give them a lot of crap because, well, literally they played a solo game and couldn't get out of the first box. But that's neither here nor there. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But the effort that they go through to make sure all the lighting is correct, to make sure they don't have any glare on their board, zooming in on the right spots on the maps and everything. They go through all that step by step, and it is, I know because I'm a YouTuber, what a pain in the ass that does. I just do it live, and I just wing it, and however it looks, it looks. These guys mostly do it offline, and they just go through, step by step, setting everything up, zooming in their camera, pausing the video, going to the next setup, recording, and then doing their next move.
Yeah,
that takes hours to do. You got microphones you gotta have lighting, you gotta have microphones, you have to have the counters, you have to have the maps, you have to have all your charts, you have to have your video camera. I mean, there is so much that goes into live streaming. You guys that don't do it don't know. So if you go to these channels and you see somebody that's well done, let me tell you, appreciate it because they went through a lot of effort for you guys.
Yeah, and if you check out Heavy Cardboard is a good example. I was watching his live play today. It's a recording of earlier live play. I think he was playing Ottoman Sunset, and he does like heavy Euros, but he also does some war games too. And it's a nice guy. I've met him at Origins a few years ago. He's got as good a setup, better setup than anybody doing live streaming of wargaming, where he's got multiple cameras and video insets and lapel mics and all kinds of stuff that I don't have. So lapel mics, what a luxury that would be. I would constantly, if I had a lapel mic, I'd constantly be bumping it and making noise, and I'd sound like a nincompoop. So I don't even want to mess with that.
So thank you all for coming out. I do appreciate it. No Enemies Here, Heathwell, O'Gwen.
Dan the Dancing Man.
Dan. No Enemies Here. Great channel. If you want to find out what's going on in Wargaming, he does a video every week and updates everyone's videos and tells you basically what everyone's up to. 30, 40-minute video. You can watch it, check out what videos are out there. And again, the effort he goes through for this is amazing. And the people that don't know, they just think it's just normal. But
Dan composes his own music for his show.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So lest you think that this is just an easy thing, you just kick back and put your feet up and start filming on YouTube. No. That's what amateurs like I do. Dan is a serious videographer, composer, and executive producer of his own channel.
Yeah. Hey, Wardrobe, how you doing? Good to see you.
Hey, how's it going?
Wardrobe, a.k.a. Itarian Hobbyist, which is what I still call him. You still call him that because that's what we're used to calling him.
I've been following him for years, so I'm going to call him that for at least another year and a half, I suspect.
And he's a Cardinals fan, so, I mean, that's all good.
Well, nobody's perfect. I mean, say that as a one-time Browns fan.
Oh, no.
Sometimes, as you're aware, sometimes you're living in Central Ohio. You're driving down the street. You see somebody walking on the sidewalk wearing Browns gear, and you think, "Man, look at that poor homeless guy. Can't afford any real clothes." I'm going to buy him some Steelers garb.
Browns, when I left, the Browns.
So he doesn't have to walk around with his head held in shame.
Yeah, when I left, the Browns were bad, and now they're still bad. So
they're
not much changes.
Nope, not with the Browns. Same old Browns.
We got Expos fan. Oh, well, he lives up there.
He's Canadian.
He lives up there in the Great White North, where every other word is like, hey. Yeah, the Great White North. That was great.
You don't make fun of him. He's such a nice boy, don't you know?
We got to make fun of him. We definitely got to make fun of him.
That Danny boy, he's such a nice boy.
And he wears that Michigan shirt every week.
I don't know what's up with that.
GoFundMe page. I'm starting a GoFundMe page so we can get him an Ohio State shirt so he can throw that Michigan shirt in the trash can.
That's a good point. We could have a ceremonial burning of the Michigan shirt. However, if we are going to start a Wargamer wardrobe fund, I think we have to start with our good friend Alexander from the Players Aid, rather than Dan. And his unfortunate Dan's shirt is just unfortunate. Alexander's shirt is a fashion travesty.
Yeah,
whatever.
I've seen some of these videos now that's been brought up, and I'm like, oh my God. But I think he does that.
At this point, I think he's doing it on purpose. Yeah. No, I don't think anybody dresses. Either that or his wife hates him and dresses him every day.
To get the aura of, oh my God, you got to go check out his shirt this week.
Holy God. He's wearing leopard print this week. Leopard print terry cloth this week.
Oh my God. I wear the gray, the plain gray. How boring am I? Look at that.
Black. I'm black. All my clothes I can wash them in 2 loads. There's black and blue or gray that go together, and that's it.
Exactly.
I don't have leopard print. I don't have tiger stripe. I don't have polka dots.
Everybody's got their thing, I guess.
That's free country. I'm all for free country. It's all good.
No enemies here. So
he does it just to aggravate Dan. That's possible, actually. I understand. I mean, why do you think I mispronounce Dan's name every week, multiple times?
Like I said, the effort that Dan goes through to get these. I mean, he's got to go to every channel. He's got to screenshot things. He's got to, record, the different videos that people are doing.
100 different.
I'm not big time. I haven't been privy. I haven't moved up the ladder like you. You get the honor of getting to do your own video every week. I got big time on. Big time. You should have put Ardwulf big time.
I don't know about that. I feel guilty because I occasionally miss it, and then that forces Dan to then go through my channel and put a clip together. So for more than any other reason, I do it to help lighten Dan's load a little bit because I know how hard he works on that thing.
Yeah, it's got to take 8 or 10 hours to do that every week.
Oh yeah, he's very easily.
So I would people to watch it to go and go, oh, this is boring. I don't like that, whatever. They don't understand the effort and the work that went into creating that.
Yeah.
They don't know because they haven't done it.
Yeah.
I would say to anyone, go try and do it better. Go try and do it, and we'll see how long you last. He's been doing this for a long, long time.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it's a great channel, and the only reason I don't recommend it to more people is I assume everybody's already subscribed to him.
Yeah, it is a great channel. No Enemies Here is who we're talking about. If you guys are unfamiliar, go subscribe to his channel. Tell him that you pissed off ID Gesture because he left me out of his video the other day.
He's done that to me, and I was like, I was cut.
I was too. I was hurt. I was mortally wounded. I'm like, what did I had like 4 or 5 good videos. I don't ever do 4 or 5 good videos. Mm-hmm. And I got cut out. I didn't make the cut. And so I posted a message to him and I said, hey, I didn't make the cut this week and I had all these good videos. And you know what happened? Some dude turned on me and was like, no enemies here. It was like his attorney. He's like, well, why don't you just talk to the man instead of making snide comments?
Oh.
And I'm like, dude, I wasn't talking to you. I wasn't even being snide or anything like that. So no enemy
Obviously a non-Canadian.
and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I must have missed your videos or whatever." Not that he did a special video to make up for it or anything, but I'm not complaining or anything. I'm not complaining. But so go subscribe to his channel, leave a comment, say you missed I Need Jester, don't be doing that anymore, or I'm unsubscribing. So he's never gonna live this down. No, you're never gonna live it down. You sent his attorney after me, man. I thought I was gonna have guys in suits showing up at my front door.
They're Canadian attorneys, though. They're really nice.
You leave a comment on No Many Enemies Here's YouTube channel that was inappropriate. I'm like, really? Wow.
like a Jay and Silent Bob.
Being Canadian. Yeah, well, I guess we got to let him slide for that. So, he
say hi to Bob and Doug McKenzie for us.
Hey, the hockey's going on over there. How many people know that the NHL Stanley Cup Finals is going on? And guess which two teams are in the finals?
I have no idea.
I find that to be the answer I get from like 99% of the people out there. They have no idea the NHL Stanley Cup Finals is on, and they have no idea who's in it. The Lightning, Tampa Bay, and Dallas Stars. So the Lightning could win it all this year. When I moved down to Florida, they were in the Stanley Cup Finals against the Chicago Blackhawks. So this would be exciting. Unfortunately, last time everything was all riled up, and you'd go downtown and they would have the lights going on, and they had what they called the what do they call it? The Thunder Alley is what they call it. Thunder Alley, where you go down and then they're playing the music and the game is on, and they have a huge TV that you can go watch it on and everything. I mean, they're not even promoting that this year, so which is kind of a shame. It's really
I live within walking distance of the hockey arena here, and I still don't pay much attention to it, to be completely honest. Yeah. I am completely comfortable with my current range of expensive hobbies. So being a big sports fan would just open me up to participating in additional expensive hobbies.
Yeah, so now you know why I went through this emotional withdrawal about 3 months ago on my channel, where I had to decide, am I going to continue doing wargaming? Am I going to continue doing sports gaming? Or am I going to have to split and cut off something? So I made the cut. And I said, I'm not doing the sports gaming anymore. And so I've been full-time wargaming, because it gets to the point where you can't do everything. Yeah. So what do you like to do other than wargaming? Let's talk about you. Let's make this show about you.
Well, I am between jobs at the moment. So right now, this right here is a lot of what I'm doing. Obviously looking for work, I'm spending a considerable amount of time doing that. And that's going okay. But it's an awkward position to have been in. It was not COVID related. It was the right about a month before COVID blew up. The employer decided, wouldn't it be cool if we were to outsource all of IT and finance to some country where we could pay them 10 cents a day? That'd be cool. And they literally hired people off the street in various places to replace us. But I'd probably overstayed my welcome there anyway. So I'm doing fine, right? I'm between jobs and it kind of sucks, but it sucks more in the sense of I'm going stir crazy because I'm bored to death than it is because I'm hurting on money or anything like that. Hell, I'm doing okay. These came today. So I'm doing fine. I had time to prepare for this. So, but it's kind of tough job market right now. I've got some fairly serious prospects that are irons in the fire right now, but two of those would involve relocation away from Central Ohio. One of which, however, would involve relocation to Minneapolis, which is home to First Minnesota, which is a huge, thriving, I don't know what they're doing right now, but wargaming community. So that's a possibility, you know. So, I mean, I'm comfortable at this point being able to continue wargaming effectively, regardless of where I end up.
Well, let's we're hoping for you. We're rooting for you. One way or the other.
Read and play. I play video games too. I tend to play boring video games. Not even like
boring.
Computer war games tend to suck. In my opinion, there's some exceptions. I played quite a bit of Hearts of Iron 3, for example, back in the day when that was the active development Hearts of Iron game. But I play a lot of like survival games where I can just kind of grind and build stuff. And I find that relatively relaxing. Okay,
that's cool. I do a lot of video war game or video game playing myself. I mean, that's kind of what I did before the actual board games playing on the computer.
So right around 2015, does that sound right? No, that can't be right. Right around 2010, I think, is when this happened. It was when I had been away from war games for a long time, but since the mid 90s, when like the people that I had been wargaming with had all kind of drifted away or moved away or gotten married or gotten involved in World War II reenactors, for example, which took them away from the wargaming scene at the time. And at that point, it wasn't obvious to me that wargaming was even an ongoing hobby, unless it was ASL, which I was still aware that there's, because I'm originally from Cleveland, and the world's largest ASL gathering exists in Cleveland every year, and I was aware that was still happening. So I kind of drifted away and did plenty of other gaming, not World War II, but role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, which I had been involved in the whole time anyway, and video games, and actually started the channel.
Saw that.
Doing video games, right? Doing MMORPG.
I was going to bring that up. I was waiting to see. Man, have you gone back and watched some of these old video games you were doing?
Yeah, well, I don't watch those anymore. I made the call to not delete them because they weren't. I had pretty much transitioned the channel away from video games completely years ago, and of course, then we want to ask the question, well, should I just delete all that content? But I decided not to, for not necessarily particularly good reasons. But none of that's heavily watched stuff or anything like that. And a lot of it was like time sensitive, updates on this. Here's a new update to Star Trek Online or something like that nobody cares about 7.5 years later.
Right.
So nobody's watching those videos right now, right? But to this day, my number one video on the channel is an old Let's Play EverQuest 2 video that's got like 28,000 views.
I saw that.
For reasons unknown.
I know. It's like, wait a minute, what? I don't even remember this video.
Yeah, and it was.
Why do you have 50,000 views? That's crazy.
It was like 9 or 10 years ago, and so it's a long time ago. So and none of the other EverQuest 2 videos I did took off like that. So I guess I just caught the algorithm just right on that particular video. Right, exactly. It'd be nice to do that again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got a learning Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition video on my channel. That's like the second most watched one. And it was like a tutorial video that I was doing just to introduce people to 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And it was like a couple weeks after 5th edition came out and the rules were kind of new, and I thought, it'd be good just to teach some people how to play the basics. Well, since then there's like professional videos step by step on how to play 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Yeah, my stupid video has got like 50,000 views. I'm like, why? What? It must have hit the right algorithm. So if somebody's like, D&D 5th edition, number one video is mine, I'm going to go click on it to see what it is. And then they watch it for 30 seconds and go, this guy's an idiot. And then go to somebody else's channel.
So D&D kind of blew up. And I feel like just as the explosion in board gaming has helped war games, I think the explosion of D&D has actually helped war games too, but specifically war games being played online and tabletop games in general being played online by players. So Dan has to go take his medical marijuana now. So it's all good.
I don't think he can get it through all of his helmet.
What about all those?
What the hell? How are you going to smoke that? I want to see a video on him taking his medical marijuana through the helmet. That's what I want to see. Not the beer. I want to see him trying to smoke through his night helmet. That would be funny.
That would apparently, by the way, I didn't know that you could get those helmets for like $50 on Amazon, by the way.
I didn't either. So
yeah, so thank you, Dan, for that valuable tip.
Yes.
For anybody that needs new everyday wear.
Video series now every Wednesday where it's like come talk. I know he's done it the last couple Wednesdays. I think he's starting to do it every week.
Yeah, I think Dan's probably.
Hey, yeah, no enemies here. Email me, idjesterlive@gmail.com. idjesterlive@gmail.com. Yeah, just email me, man. I was just trying to get him on my show, but he's too big time for me. You know what I'm saying? I've been begging him.
Very busy with the Charles Roberts Award.
He's like, well, I'll have to think about it. My schedule is so difficult. I mean, I've got to shovel the snow, and then tomorrow I've got to shovel the snow, and then
the day after he has to go search for wild mushrooms
too. I'm sorry, what?
The day after he has to go search for wild mushrooms in the forests of Quebec.
Yeah, I didn't even think Amazon delivered up there, so I don't know what I don't know what he's doing over there. But
they only deliver. They do, but they only deliver poutine.
On my show, come talk to me. We can talk. I mean, yeah, I was a little upset because you left me off your channel once, but we can talk about other things. We got lots of things to talk about. I'll get back. I'll get with you what I can. Wow, I haven't heard anything from him, so. He'll get with me. We'll see.
He'll figure it out.
So you do the wargaming, you do a little bit of video gaming. What other kind of?
I read a fair amount, not as much as I would like to. My reading at this point is almost entirely either history or science fiction. And when it's science fiction, it tends to be super hardcore thinky science fiction, like Greg Egan type stuff. Okay. But I mean, that's it. And I work and that's really it. And
you spend 8 or 10 hours a week clipping counters.
Sometimes. Yeah. This week, not so much, but that's only because the stuff that's come in this week, you can't really clip these unless you're going to use a belt sander or something like that to do it. But yeah, I mean, there have been weeks here where I've clipped 2 games a day for a week. And I don't know that I'm going to put 8 or 10 hours on that, but it's, I'm really bored, man. I'll tell you what.
Doesn't that drive you crazy?
When the game is unclipped? Yes, it totally does.
My stance on clipping counters by now. Mm-hmm. You've been around me long enough. And I've brought it up enough times. And I always like to hear other people's opinions, especially
even when they're wrong.
I have a guest that's a respected wargamer aficionado. And what am I stupid? Am I crazy? Am I just out of place? Or what is your opinion on clipping counters?
I clip everything. Somebody asked, I think this somewhere on Facebook, is like, hey, I just got the new flying colors from GMT, and the counters are like 1/2 inch by 1 inch counters. They're rectangular counters. I don't know if I should clip these. That feels weird. No, I got these exact same shaped counters that I'm clipping right now. I clip everything. There are like DVG. If you're going to try and put your DVG Fleet Commander counters or Field Commander Napoleon is what broke my other clipper, my deluxe clipper, because those counters are so thick. I ended up clipping it with nail clippers because the counter physically will not fit in this thing. So
they were clipped. Am I insane thinking that?
The I can tell you that
Okay.
I don't have Field Commander Nimitz. My Field Commander Napoleon counters were a lot of them were rectangular and not clipped. It's possible some of the newer games are. I think like the Tiger Leader, I think those might be rounded already. But I don't have any other games other than Field Commander Napoleon, which I think is a masterpiece, by the way.
Nimitz? Really? Awesome.
Napoleon.
Napoleon.
I don't have Nimitz. And I guess a lot of people expressed reservations about the previous edition of Nimitz. But with the new edition, I think it's probably time for me to check it out.
Yeah, I think they're already pre-rounded.
Huh. Well, they weren't when I bought it. I tell you that.
Yeah, I think
there have been, I think, at least 2, maybe 3 printings of that, though.
I was going to say, I think this is 2017 printing, so maybe
mine. I've had mine longer than that. I can tell you that.
I'm thinking maybe with the newer edition, they did
That's
that.
And I'm all for games that come pre-rounded. That's great. I like to see it. It means I can just punch it and be good to go. The last game I had, Dawn's Early Light, the Compass Games was kind enough to send me. It has pre-rounded counters, but I haven't done anything with that yet. Yesterday, Brotherhood and Unity from them is another one of their mounted map, pre-rounded counters, cards, beautiful looking game. It actually also looks like a Paths of Glory type system, but it's about the Bosnian conflict. And actually, it's a 3-faction game. It actually looks really interesting. But I'm all in favor of companies taking care of that for me. But if they don't, I'm going to damn well clip my own counters. And
don't you think, as war gamers out there, we should push the game manufacturers to at least punch the counters out and possibly round them as a default for us? Too many war gamers that I know spend way too much time clipping counters months after months after months. And yes, I know that most people say, "Oh, it's a tradition and it's a rite of passage to be a war gamer to do this stuff."
I have never said that.
Not you. I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about other people that have been on my channel. We've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
Rite of passage to be a war gamer to do this. Some people enjoy it. Some people love doing it. It absolutely drives me crazy.
So I agree, however, and this is a big however, because the kind of game that I'm about to mention is the kind of game that I lean towards fairly heavily. Let's take, for example, It Never Snows here, that I bought thanks to Wardrobe. Thank you, Wardrobe, that bought that the other day. It's 3 counter sheets, right? So it's not a humongous game, right? But they're standard wargame counter sheets of half-inch counters, which means that they are 280 counters to the sheet. If they had been pre-rounded counters, the typical pre-rounded counter sheet fits about 140 counters. So instead of 3 counter sheets, we'd probably be looking at 6.
Okay.
And that has a cost, right?
Okay.
And if it is a choice between, and I mean, there are some games for which I think the pre-rounded solution, I think, makes sense. Games with 1 counter sheet, or games that aren't particularly big, or games that you could get 1 or 2 counter sheets and have everything you need. The same thing with mounted maps, by the way. But for other games, I don't think it does make sense for games with large numbers of counters. Let's say, for example, that Decision Games had decided to publish Atlantic Wall with pre-rounded counters. Well, there's 3,600 counters in that game, right? That's a game that if that had been seen as a requirement, it wouldn't have gotten published at all. And it's an extreme example. It's the biggest game I own, but by a lot. But it's, even then, games with 5 and 6 counter sheets of regular half-inch counters become unpublishable with pre-rounded counters. So I agree. I'd like to see the pre-rounded counter solutions become more prevalent, but I don't think it's practical to say that I don't think we're going to ever see them, and I don't think I want to ever see them that be a universal standard. I prefer it. I think everybody does, But there are some types of games, and those happen to be a lot of times the kind of games I like, that just wouldn't be practical to publish that way. The same thing with mounted maps. I mean, the Australian Design Group guys are lunatics for publishing a 6-map game where the maps are all mounted, right? It's the only game like that. No other game that I'm aware of with more than 2 maps has mounted maps. And some people will say all maps should be mounted. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but there are some kinds of games that becomes a practical impossibility for. A game that would weigh 30 pounds. And I'm amazed that DVG did it. I mean, you've now unpacked your Field Commander Napoleon with its 9 or whatever it is mounted map boards. But they're not full size either, right? So
right. They're not the same. They're different dimensions than a normal one.
So I mean, I'm all for improvement of component quality, and I think we have seen huge leaps in improved component quality in general board games over the last, say, 15 or 20 years. Hugely better than they used to be. Some of that has bled over into war games, but not as much as we'd like, right? I mean, there's still, a game. Oh, it's a good example. I'm trying to think of a small game that's been published in the last year or so by a major publisher that didn't have a mounted map or pre-rounded counters. And
Holland 44.
That's older than that, though. That's a few years older than that. But that's actually a good example. It's not a huge game. That doesn't even have a full-size box. It's in an 1.5-inch box. They made mounted maps for it, and the mounted maps are very attractive. You can't fit them in the box. Even without the counters, you can't fit them in the box. So yeah. Give me mounted maps, but if you have more than one mounted map, or if you have cards, then I need a 3-inch box at minimum. And I don't have enough knowledge of the realities of organizing these print jobs to tell you, well, a 3-inch box costs this much more, and a 4-inch box would cost this much more. GMT is about to release, as in the next year or so, their first game in a 4-inch box.
Okay,
that's going to be the Mark Herman's new Pacific War.
Pacific War, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to have 2 mounted maps plus an unmounted map plus 10 counter sheets. So another good example. And actually, that's a great example because Mark is on the record as saying he doesn't like to clip counters, which I completely understand. But his game has 10 counter sheets. They're not going to be able to pre-round those. It's just not going to be. I think it's not going to be practical. Is that where Aragorn is from?
Is that where
I'm just wondering.
Dundinian. No, that's the home of the home of the Toronto Blue Jays
really?
training. Dundinian. I've been there a couple of times for their games.
Okay.
Anyway, I agree with just about everything you say, which I do with most of your commentary on things. I think we see eye to eye on most everything. But I think the game companies should offer that as an option, just like they offer mounted maps for Holland 44. Hey, we're not going to print them, and if we get enough orders for them, then we'll print them. I think they should offer it as an option to people and say, we're gonna produce this game. It's going to come with 11 counter sheets, and it's going to cost $115. If you want them already cut, pre-rounded, it's going to cost you $175. So it's going to cost you $60 more or whatever.
That's an interesting idea, actually. To say maybe leave it. I mean, so the current marketplace reality is for the biggest company in our space, which is GMT. It relies on its P500 pre-order system. It's
exactly
basically what it is, right? So the whole point behind that was to put it in the hands of the fans. What games get printed? Well, why not try that? I think that's a pretty good idea, actually. Now, it would depend. I mean, what if let's take Pacific War as our example. I think it's a good example because it's 10 counter sheets, right? The choice of Pacific War for $50 more pre-rounded or $50 less not pre-rounded, which one would I choose? I'd probably pick the unrounded counters. But I say that with the understanding that it's a huge game. It's going to be relatively expensive. I may end up buying 2 copies of it, and I think I wouldn't want to do that if I was paying a premium for some particular component. And it's going to have mounted maps. The main maps will be mounted, and there will be an unmounted scenario map. And I would just as soon have unmounted maps for a multi-map game. I would just as soon have unmounted maps. I mean, I don't feel super strongly about it. I'm not refusing to buy games with mounted maps, but
the current P500 for Pacific War: The Struggle Against Japan,
like $2,000,
$79.
That's really cheap for what it is. It's
really cheap. Online, it'll be $125. So you're saving $45.
That's a lot.
Okay.
How many people have pre-ordered that at this point? Are you looking at it?
It was over 1,900 last time I looked. There is 1,983.
That's a lot for GMT to have almost 2,000 pre-orders for a game with 10 counter sheets.
Yes. So
and probably a total of 150 pages of rules too.
Yeah, it's going to be mammoth. But I think here's my.
But yeah, leave it up to the audience to make that determination. I'd like to see the results.
When the counter sheets come down the assembly line, they gotta come down with their little press to make the little cuts in them.
Right.
Okay. Couldn't they, when they come down, just cut them all out instead of putting them in the counter sheets? This is another one of the people, war gamers, have been ingrained with. I've got a counter sheet. Right. And I see all my counters, so I know they're all there and blah, blah, blah.
So you're saying they should be pre-punched as well?
They should be. I'm saying at a minimum. When they have the little, and I'm not a printing guy, so I don't know, but when the little sheets are coming down, the thing comes down to punch the little grooves in all the counters.
Right.
Instead of having like a solid cutter, what they do is they have like a little half-inch one, and it doesn't go all the way through. Right. So instead of just cutting it, it just goes in a little bit and goes up and down as the sheets come by. Why couldn't they just say, you know what? Let's just punch everything, and punch them all out.
I don't know if there would be mechanical concerns with that or not. There might be. My concern with it would be, Compass Games has recently found a domestic printer that gives them results that they really like for counters, as opposed to whoever the Chinese printer was. Okay, so they're like the super thick counters, but Bill said in one of the recent Compass Games town halls that they're so well die cut that they have to shrink wrap the counter sheets, or the counters will fall out. And actually, in my unboxing video of the Jacobite Rebellion game, the hex tiles that you put in the hexes to represent the terrain on the map, I took it out of the shrink wrap, and they all just dropped out of the sheets. It was hilarious and comical at the time, and I was very embarrassed because the video became out of control at that point. But yeah, do you end up with loose counters on the floor of the shop? Then somebody's missing a counter. The advantage of counters on sheets
come down the assembly line.
Yeah.
Go to somebody that's taking the sheet and stacking it up.
Maybe.
Right? Or something that causes them to stack up. Instead, you have it go down into a plastic bag. They all fall in the bag, and you put the bag aside.
Yeah, but what happens when a counter bounces loose? I mean, as somebody who has run a shop in the past that had mechanical screw sorting machines, sometimes stuff flies out. Sometimes your bag of 100 screws, right, has 101 or 99 in it. And if it's 100 identical screws and you're missing one, nobody's going to notice that. But if you're missing the 6th Guards Tank Battalion, where's my 6th Guards Tank Battalion? That's going to be a problem for war games. Now, I'm not saying this is an insurmountable concern, right? But that is,
and you got to live in.
I want to allow for, right?
To sit there, and make sure quality control. We don't have missing parts or whatever. I mean, that's the biggest. When you look at,
it's interesting that you brought that up.
is people have the counter sheets,
Mm-hmm.
they look at them, and they go, "Oh, all my counters are there because I don't see a hole." And they go,
Right.
"Oh, okay, so there's my
Right.
counter sheet. I got 6 complete." And for me, and for not for me personally, but for normal wargamers, their view is, "Oh, this game is worth so much more than the sheet that's already cut," which
Mm-hmm.
makes absolute 0 sense if you think about it in normal terms. If you were to buy a game online that is the exact same game, one sheet is not cut and the other sheet somebody's already cut those counters out, you're paying half for that.
The difference is, though, that so part of it has got to be just that, right? As people say, I want my games to be this to be in pristine condition, right? Even if they're going to take it and punch it and play it, they want it to be in pristine condition, and I can understand that. But another piece of the equation is that if it is unpunched, you could easily identify whether it is complete or not. I bought a copy of the old SPI Russian Civil War on eBay just the other day, and it's complete, right? But I just sit there for an hour counting counters, and I wasn't super fastidious about it, where I'm sorting them and all that stuff. I just counted the counters, and it's 400 counters. It took me like an hour watching TV and verifying that all the counters are there, right? Had I gotten the one unpunched SPI counter sheet with 400 counters in it, I would have been able to look at it and say, okay, we're good to go.
Is that a evolution of, or a non-evolution of wargaming that we live in currently? Because this is the way people did things back in the 70s and the 80s. There's a way with technology to advance our industry that much farther.
Well, there is. We have that. It's called Vassal.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about Well, actually, that's not even true. It's been brought to my attention in a couple cases lately of Vassal modules with missing pieces, where we had to go back to the guy that made the module and say, "Hey, this is missing this, Confederate rifle regiment or whatever it was." So that's not a concern. But another thing is that as somebody that likes, so we had asked in our stream about counter clipping is why do we clip counters? And I had mentioned at the time that Nate, the Gimpy Gamer, had brought something up that I had never actually thought of, because I've been clipping counters for years, long before I started a YouTube channel. And he said, "Hey, I'm filming these games. I want them to look as nice as possible, and that's a good reason to clip." And I was like, "Wow, that's a great reason to clip."
Sure.
For the same reason, I hate center nibs on counters, because they're hard to deal with. They're hard to trim off. They're a lot easier, however, to deal with if you can cut them out of the sheet yourself with a craft knife or rotary cutter or something like that. So for that reason, I have a very short list of Avalon Hill games that I would like to have, but I'm insisting that they be unpunched, because I want to be able to cut them out of the sheets so I don't have to deal with the center nibs that will be on the Avalon Hill counters. So,
Okay,
there's various reasons, right?
Let's say in a perfect world, in a perfect ID gesture world, 2 years from now, manufacturers are cutting counters, are pre-rounding them and everything, shipping them to us, and all we have to do is open the box, set the counters on the table, and get ready to play. Okay,
that would be cool.
That's a perfect world. But
Sure.
you get your box, and there's a counter, 2 counters, 5 counters missing, or whatever. Okay. And you email the manufacturer, "Hey, I'm missing these counters," and they send you a document that has the counters for you to print out. Would that be acceptable for you as a resolution to that?
Well, in some cases it has to be, right? So let's say that I had found that we're missing counters in Russian Civil War. It's a game that I got it for $40 on eBay. Punched, right? But it was, it said complete, and it was complete. Let's say it had been missing a couple counters. My buddy's copy of Russian Civil War is missing the 2 counters that are the counter for the Tsar and the counters for the Tsar's gold. Do I then, what do I do if I really want to play that game? Well, I'll just make replacement counters. That's not a big deal. If I have the images, I can do that. It's kind of a pain to do in quantity. Doing 1 or 2 counters at a time is not that bad though. So yeah, I can make replacement
say
counters.
your world, manufacturers occasionally, I mean, 90, I mean, let's look at 95% of the boxes that ship out will be perfect and they'll have all the counters. All right. Yeah. Okay. So in a world, right? So the 5% that doesn't have that, okay, they're missing counters. Why don't the manufacturers just include, say, okay, we've got our East Front game with Russians and Germans and Romanians and a few Italian units. They send some extra counters, some blank counters that are gray and red and green usually for Italian and dark green for Romanian. Okay. So they just send you some blank ones for whatever, size units they are. In case you're missing 1 or 2, you could just easily just write on a counter the stats and everything that you need for that counter.
And for years, people did that. A buddy of mine's copies of the GTW Third World War series. He's got a bunch of missing counters. He made his own replacement counters out of blank counters. Somewhere behind my pile of trash over here, I have a big mason jar that's just blank counters that from various games that had blank counters. They go in there, and maybe I'll use them at some point to make replacement counters. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. People did that for years,
Yeah. And I mean, if you order
GMT
games from GMT, you're eventually, let's say you order 5 games, you're eventually going to have a whole bunch of extra gray and red and purple and orange and yellow and everything, every color under the sun counters that you can make your own counters in 2 seconds. And you could even print them out on label sheets and just take the label, cut it out, paste it on your counter you have, and you're ready to go.
Well, so their games with blocks intentionally include 1 extra of each type of block.
When you get a lot of block games, there are several extra blocks that come in the game. So for me as a purchaser, shouldn't I try to have our game companies further themselves to further the industry? Wouldn't it be better if you as a customer bought your game at your local game store, you took it home, you took it out of the box, you put the map down, you put the counters down, and you're ready to record, you're ready to go live, you're ready to do everything without having to spend hours clipping counters and taking them out of the sheets and doing all that stuff? Wouldn't it be better for you to take the game, you buy it at Cabs, you set it down on the table, and you guys are ready to play?
Sure. I mean, that's absolutely true. Well, I mean, again, though, how relevant that is depends on the kind of game, right? So let's take as another example, another very popular game that is a very timely topic right now, which is Imperial Struggle. Imperial Struggle, we played it on Vassal, right? But Imperial Struggle takes quite a long time to set it up, just to set it up, right? And I'm not talking about punching the counters. I'm talking about setup time. I have played games in the last couple of years locally here that took 100 man hours to set up, right? Between 4 people, it took us a couple of days. 100 man hours, does that sound right? That sounds like an estimate that's too high, but easily 20 or 30 man hours to set up, right? And I'm talking about big OCS games and stuff like that. I'm specifically talking about Case Blue, which took us about 30 man hours to set up. Yeah, I mean... But I suspect that a lot of gamers will, if you look on BGG for people who have like tricked out their game kits of whatever it is, Twilight Imperium or Carcassonne or whatever it is, where they've made fancy piece cartons and dividers and organizers and stuff like that. People are still going to do that kind of stuff. And I don't think what I'm doing here is necessarily all that different from that. I'm just making the game as aesthetically pleasing as I can. And I'm by no means saying that anything that you have said is wrong. I think that anything that a publisher can do that's practical to eliminate setup burden or prep time or whatever you're calling this is good. It is just good, and I'd like to see it. To what extent it is practical becomes the real question, and then I don't know what the answer is because I'm not privy to the printing realities of, well, what is it? I got 600 counter game here. What's the print cost difference between the pre-rounded counters and the regular square counters? I don't know. So,
well, as we talked about before we went live, I'm the kind of person who I did this for my sports game companies as well. But I won't go down that road. But there are some really good sports game companies out there that do above and beyond what they should do.
Sure.
There are other ones that don't. And I usually have problems with is the ones that don't innovate, don't do good customer support. They don't try to further the hobby. Things doing things the same way since 1970.
Right.
Through the nose for things they shouldn't be doing.
Right, and that's unquestionably true in wargaming.
Sports gaming over to wargaming, same issues, different company names that are out there.
Yes.
I think as customers, now because we're a niche hobby, those companies rely on us to purchase their games and to keep them funded and to progress the hobby ourselves. But as customers, for me, this is just my opinion. A lot of people may or may disagree with it, but I don't think that there's too many traditionalists in wargaming currently that aren't demanding enough from their game companies. So, for example, and we talked about this before we went live, I purchased Illusion to Glory GMT game because it's a card-driven game system that I love. It is part of the Paths of Glory system. Many reasons why I wanted to purchase it.
Sure.
When you open the box up and there's 100 cards that come in the game that basically run the game.
It's a card-driven game.
20 of those cards had to be reprinted because they were printed wrong, had the wrong information, or were updated or something like that.
So I was hoping we were going to get to this, actually, because I did a whole video which you commented on and a bunch of other people commented on it. Some people got very agitated about the subject of errata. And I was accused at one point of being a shill for GMT, by the way, even though I did a video on Imperial Struggle and hated it. But what we're talking about is not so much a flaw or a problem at GMT. It is a quality control problem with the model of publishing war games now. Okay. I'm always interested when I see the pictures that people post on Facebook from time to time about, here's this picture of the SPI staff from 1978, for example. And nobody thinks to mention staff. There's like 30 people there, all of whom are employees, are being paid to be there. Not necessarily being paid a princely wage or anything, but they're paying people. They have a paid editor. They have a paid proofreader. They have paid staff to do quality control. Nobody doing war games now has that, right? And for a bigger, they're all, to whatever extent, it's like GMT has employees, but basically the who's the quality control, right? There's somebody checking to make sure all the components went in the box, but who is it that's checking checking the proof copies to see that all the cards are correct, that the map is correct and stuff like that? Gene? I mean, he can't, maybe it is Gene, I don't know, but one person can't do that job for as many games as they publish. So it falls back to these independent development groups. That's basically the designer and his buddies, or her buddies, whoever, whatever the case may be, who are doing the development work and doing the design and the development work that would be better controlled internally, but the realities of publishing these kinds of games nowadays dictate that they're not. that the company GMT doesn't have the resources to hire professional proofreaders or anybody like that. Somebody said that on the video. It said, I think they should fire the editor. Okay. Who? Please tell me the Wargaming publisher that has an editor to check this stuff to fire, right? None of them do. It's always up to the development people. Maybe the developer has his own copy editor. And if so, fantastic. But it's a person that's not being paid a professional wage to do that. It's a problem with the model, right? I'm not suggesting it's not a problem. I'm suggesting it's a problem with the model.
With the process
yes.
that's been going on the same way since 1970, and nothing's been freaking changed.
Yes. Well, so I mean,
there's so many problems nowadays because of technology and people changing things and mistyping things. Instead of actually creating the files themselves, they outsource it to somebody else and they send them a photo.
Yeah.
You know, I have an artist send me a picture. They send me a picture. I assign that picture to the wrong counter.
Right.
The process has been going on the same way for so many years, and nobody's said anything about it because back in the 70s and 80s, we had red counters with black letters. Now we don't have that anymore. We actually have good counters with good maps and good quality components and everything like that. But nobody's changed the process to say, when the developer sends me the game that I'm going to be printing, we print a game,
right?
I ship that to him. He looks through everything and says, yes, this is right.
I mean, that's why you're getting a proof copy from the printer.
Right.
They do the print.
You would think that this stuff is caught. 20% should not be an acceptable amount for any customer out there.
Oh, that's a catastrophic amount of errata. And I mean, I understand that, you know, there's a reason for it, right? So there was I forget what game this was, whether it was For the Sword or the Supreme Commander or whatever, but I think there was this GMT game where they accidentally sent the one of the playtest copies of the stuff, the materials to the printer rather than the final copies, and that's what got printed and shipped, and then they had to fix it. And to their credit, GMT, you know, not instantly, ended up fixing that thing with an update kit that said, you know, here's a replacement, you know, here's an updated rule book and replacement map and replacement counters, and the update kit completely replaced the counters in the game. So yeah, I don't think there's any level of disagreement where people think it's not a problem, but it's a problem with the process, the publishing model, right? Rather than maybe the solution is to have two major publishers now, right? And everybody else is a nickel and dime Bob out of his garage. And the problem is that right now we have 100 nickel and dime Bobs and one guy who has a really big garage, you know? So,
well, I think, well, first of all, 2 points. Number one, we are not specifically talking about GMT. So anybody that wants to make a comment about that, you can just forget that. We're not talking specifically about GMT. We just have some examples. You know, my example with the Illusions of Glory, yes, it was GMT. But we're not trying to pick on GMT at this point, okay? Second point is, we are not trying to say that it's anybody's fault or there's anything wrong. We understand that there will be problems, there will be issues, you will run across things that are forgotten. We're not saying we're looking for 100% accuracy. That's not what we're trying to discuss here.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, there are also problems and there's problems, right? There's problems where you're like, oh, that's irritating, and problems that are render something unplayable.
Well, I mean, there is a lot that the manufacturers, the developers, or whoever to get this process working right that aren't using. And that, you know who that is? That is your wargaming community, right? What they could do, right, is they could post all the files for their game, or most of them, you know, maybe 90% of them or whatever. I mean, you could post your charts and say, guys, this is going to be the chart. Make sure the wording is right. Make sure everything, you know, and you have your actual wargaming community look at the charts and everything. because those are the people that are going to be getting the game. I'm going to be spending a little bit more time looking that stuff over and making sure everything looks right before it gets shipped to me.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm just saying
there are
there's
companies though who are
other things companies can do to take this to the next level that they're not doing here in the 21st century. And it just most wargamers are accepting of that. And for me, I'm not. And it aggravates me to no extent. And I just think there'll be problems, there'll be issues. But when I pick up a game, now, fortunately for me, GMT had to reprint a second edition, which they put in the box
update
with the new cards, the new rule book, and everything. But that took the company money to do that.
Yes, it did. Wasted money
to reprint those cards, reprint the rule book, reprint the charts, everything they had to redo and put it in this box for me.
Absolutely.
How much more time, effort, and money could they have saved to make sure this stuff was done right the first time is what I'm saying.
That's absolutely no argument with that statement. It is ultimately a drain on these companies, but so I'm going to say though that I think in a way it's a two-edged sword, right? In a way, a lot of these companies are dependent on their quality control. Multiman, great example of this. This is their quality control, is they have fans volunteering to take their time to go through everything, and their development process takes years and everything. That's why Multiman tends to release relatively clean product, because it goes through an exhaustive playtest process. The OCS thing we've been playtesting has been it's been in playtest for 7 or 8 years. Third winter, it's crazy. I'm on the tail end of that, right? I'm like the lowest guy on that totem pole. But would that be better to leverage that fan goodwill into additional quality control, or would it be better to hire a professional to do it? That's a question, right? It's to have a quality control to go through that, to maybe work hand in hand with the developer. And then when the proof copy comes back from the printer.
I now work for GMT. I contact you. I say, Ardwulf, we love your channel. You've been doing a great job on this. We've got
as if that would happen.
I heard from ID Jester to give you a chance because you're kind of on the low end of things and we need to bump you up a little. No, seriously. I've worked for GMT and I come to you and I say, look, you've been supporting us. You got a lot of our games. You do a lot of our games on your channel, blah, blah, blah. We're going to be printing 8 games this year. And what we're going to do is we're going to send them to the printers. We're going to get about 25 copies of the game. And we're going to ship them out to you. And we're going to ship one to Rough Swordsman Wargamer. We're going to ship one to Gimpy. We're going to ship one over to the Player Aid. And we just want you to try this out. Look for errors. This will be a prototype copy. You can keep it for free. Just try it out and make sure everything looks right. The rules look right. Give it a play through. If you want to take it to your local game convention or your local game club and play a game or two with some people, feel free to do that. Just, don't post anything, ahead of time for it because we have an NDA on it. And would you be interested in doing that? If somebody came to you and said that, what would your answer be?
My answer would be, it depends on the game. It would have to be a game that I am interested in. As somebody that does occasionally get free stuff sent to them, I prefer that it's stuff I asked for because I'm interested in that. So I can't cover everything, right? Even if I was just dedicating an entire channel to GMT stuff, I'd have trouble covering GMT's alone's releases, and I do a lot with stuff from Compass and MMP and whoever. So it would depend, right? It would have to be a game I was interested in. If it's something like Border Reader's game from GMT
that they send you,
and
there's all these different individual boxes: Ancients, World War II, East Front, West Front, Pacific War.
Yeah, maybe.
There's like a whole list of things. You just check the boxes and send it back to them of what games you're interested in. And when the games are going for prototype, they email you and say, Ardwulf, this game's going to prototype. Would you like a copy or not? You say yes or no. And then if you say yes, they ship you a prototype copy. You get it for free with the caveat that when the final production game comes, they will also send you a copy of that for free. And the only requirements they ask from you is you are basically their quality control, and you're checking rules, spelling, making sure that numbers on the map actually are the numbers that match what's in the rule book, just stuff like that. Then GMT is not hiring a professional editor. They're sending it to people who actually care about this community and about wargaming in general. And they're getting people free things for their time and effort, which is probably a lot less money to them out of pocket than what they spend now.
Well, so that's a line item in the company budget that I'm not privy to, but my guess offhand is that unless the errors that crept through are resulting in a reprint effort like they were with Illusions of Glory, and which they are with the 3 games that they've printed in the last couple of months that all have significant component errata. I think unless they're doing that, I think their current cost is probably zero, because they're leaving it in the hands of the developers. I think that's the reality of the situation, right? I'm not saying that that's an optimal policy. I think it obviously isn't. But that's probably what's close to the truth, right? It's going to be up to the individual. Nobody's got in-house designers and developers, right? So they're leaving, say, I'm going to pick a name at random that everybody's heard of. Frank Chadwick's got his Frank Chadwick team somewhere that does the development, right? And Frank's going to let it go when Frank's happy with it. Frank's real picky about what he lets go to the publisher. So by the time it gets to the publisher, GMT or whoever it is, the game's very well done. Maybe there's some typos in the rule book and stuff like that can be easily remedied with living rules or not. But then we got another developer who doesn't care and who wants to crank out as many titles as designer, I should say, titles as possible, who I won't even come up with a hypothetical name, but you can fill in the blank yourself, and who just cranks ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk out to his publisher, Joe Bob Games. And every single one of them releases with problems. And every single one of them is, hey, we got this series of games now that's half developed, right? And the thing clearly doesn't work as written. And everybody that looks at the game and tries to play it sees that, but that person is staining the reputation of the entire publisher by doing that, because then the publisher accrues a reputation, because the bigger logo on the box is the publisher's logo, right? Not the designer's name. So the publisher is going to take the bigger black eye sooner than the designer will. But that quality control step, which really probably should reside with the publisher, is in fact with the designer and their team. And I think that's the problem. I think nobody's doing it. If it would be better, I think, if Joe Bob Games, to name a random hypothetical company, were to say, I don't really care whether we're going to pay a team to do it or we're going to rely on a volunteer pool to do it or whatever, but we are going to control that quality effort internally at the management level, at the project management level, rather than just leaving it up to the designer and their people and assuming everything is going to be okay. Because sometimes the designer is in the army and gets deployed to Iraq for 5 years at a time, and something got flushed out into production and it just wasn't ready yet. That's and I'm not going to name names on that, but that's something that happened, right?
Okay. So you have your designer pumping these games out.
Johnny Rando
sends them over to publisher XYZ. XYZ starts producing these games. They're a mess. There's errata. There's missing counters. There's cards that are wrong. Blah blah blah. who as customers do we need to bring up our pitchforks and axes to?
Well, the party to send the complaints to is probably the publisher.
See, that's the issue. Too many wargamers out there, especially wargaming YouTube channels, are too nice, and I don't want to piss anybody off. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Blah blah. I don't get anything free from nobody. I got some stuff from Lock and Load a year ago, or two, or whatever it was. Besides that, I don't get anything from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I find that there are just too many people out there that aren't willing to say the tough words. And I'm the kind of person that I don't mind saying the tough words, because if XYZ manufacturer continues to produce these things, I don't blame Billy Bob. It's not Billy Bob's problem.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the manufacturer who keeps putting this crap out time after time after time, and us as customers who continue buying this crap. That's where I ran into problems with my sports game community, is the communities were so ingrained with buying certain companies' stuff because they've been doing it since 1970, then they refuse to change. That's what I'm finding. The same thing happens at the wargame community. We've been buying things from this company for 10, 15, 20, 25 years.
Right.
I'm not going to change, even though they produce inadequate stuff with inadequate producers or designers, and they're pumping out problem games. And us as customers aren't getting the right information on YouTube to say, do not buy this game because it's a piece of crap.
So, well, I was about to say, please don't rely on me for this information. But the reality of it, again, back to the reality of it. The reality is that we are, you and I and other people doing this kind of thing, are an information channel. That because I'm a giant friggin' nerd and watch the live streams that Compass Games, for example, does. And so I have some idea of what Bill said last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever it was. Not everybody has time to do that. I'm unemployed and have time to do that right now. So I can keep my ear to the ground and be an information source. It's not really what I'm trying to do, but I mean, I'm just saying that my instinct is to say, no, that's not what I'm trying to, that's not my goal, is to keep people in the loop. But the reality is that people are going to look to us because we are perceived as very serious people and authorities in the hobby. And I don't know that that's good, but we are, right? So if a game that releases with big problems, as to be honest, Imperial Struggle has, I think it's safe to say that there are probably people that watched my video on Imperial Struggle, struggling with it and ending up coming to the same conclusion that I did, which is that it's a game with a lot of issues, even aside from the errata. But I'm, shill for GMT, so what do I know? Their biggest new release of the year, and I hated it. But I wouldn't say hated it. I just think it's got issues. It's over and above the errata. So a lot of
issues that need to be addressed. And
yeah, but so what
is the how did this game get to the state it is, and no money get? And I think this will help fix everything, or part of the issues is find out why this game ended up the way it is, change the process, and not do the same freaking thing next year with another game, which is what I find some of these game manufacturers doing time after time after time, because they've been doing the same thing for 20, 25, 30 years. And they're not changing things to make it better for us as the customers. And I also blame us as customers, because when the manufacturer sells out of their 2,000 or 3,000 copies they made, they look at it as cha-ching, cha-ching. We made it
just one.
Yeah. So
that's true.
Well, all you want. I sold my 3,000 copies of the game. I'm happy. I don't care if there's a RADA. We'll put a RADA on, or rules or whatever.
So I guess I would also draw attention to the contrast between mistakes as in errata and games that just released in a not finished state. Okay, because that's another not identical but related problem. This is certain publishers, as we know, and might not be thinking of the one you're thinking of, have been known to do this, have been known to release a game where the rulebook is a complete fiasco. Actually, I can even think of GMT examples where GMT has done this, where the rulebook is a complete joke. No one can learn this game from this book. And maybe there's a great game here, but I can't find it. So, I mean, that's kind of another variable. And again, it points to the lack of a centralized control, a centralized project lead, who can oversee that kind of thing. And I'll point out that at least for part of their production, Compass now has that and has for some time. And John Kranz is kind of the overall development coordinator for a big chunk of Compass's product line. And has it made as much a difference as I'd like? I don't know, but I think it's made a difference. I think it's one example where I could think of where a difference has been made because they are trying to exert better control over that process. Not everybody is trying that. And in some cases, as you pointed out, they're not trying new things or trying to improve their process simply because we've always done it this way. But they will literally say, we've always done it this way. That's very aggravating.
Here's for me personally, and for you guys as customers, game companies should be trying new things every time until they get this process working correctly every single time. Because us as customers, if we don't have errata coming out, if we don't have to, produce our own sheets and our own counters and all this stuff that we spend all of our time doing, that's more time for us to actually play the games, right? So we as customers should be more attentive and more demanding of our companies. Our companies should be more demanding and trying new things. I would rather buy a game that from GMT that was a complete failure because they tried something different and it didn't work than to get something like this game that they've done 25 times and there's still 20 cards that need to be reprinted because it was done wrong the first time. I would rather have a game that came to me total crap because at least they're trying a different process or they're trying something new. The excuse of, well, this is the way we've always done it, shouldn't be acceptable to them, and it should be not acceptable to us.
So from a consumer standpoint, like let's say I finally pull the trigger and order myself a copy of Illusions of Glory. And I'm aware that there have been errata problems. I'm aware that they've been fixed. And I'm aware that in my box of Illusions of Glory, I will receive updated components. And those problems that were evident upon release will not be an issue. Well, as a consumer, I'm okay with that. But as somebody who is invested in the hobby, I would sure like to see that not happen and that not be necessary in the first place for GMT or whoever to have to come in and fix those mistakes after the fact, because those cost money, right? Every time that whoever it is makes this mistake that results in them having to call the printer up, we screwed this up. Can you please run us off 10 of these correct counter sheets? Blah, 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 blah. Then they're spending money to do that, right? And I'm not comfortable. I don't think their profit margins are so generous that they can afford to keep eating those costs. And I'd like to see these companies continue to be around for 5, 10, 20 years. So sure. I'm not in charge, so I can only talk. And I don't know that anybody's listening or really should listen to me. But I would sure like to see more effort at fixing the fundamental causes of the issue rather than fixing the individual game errata that came up again because we didn't check it in or catch it before it went to the printer.
I am 110% behind that. Fix the process. If we still get errata sheets, I mean, you open these Napoleonic games and they have a whole sheet of errata, rule clarifications or whatever. I don't mind that. And I don't think any wargamer out there would even mind that. The things in mine are things like, I can't play this game because I don't understand the rules, and the rule book doesn't tell me what to do, which means I got to waste my time going online. Or
Yeah.
the rule book says, look on the map, and my number is going to be between 5 and 10. And I look at the map, and it says 3 to 8. And you're like, is it I only use the numbers between 3 and 5, or do I use the numbers 3 to 8? And you have no idea, because somewhere along the lines they changed that rule, but they didn't change the map.
Very beautifully printed Triumph of Chaos version 2. This is from Clash of Arms. Very attractive components. They did a beautiful job with the graphic presentation of the game. As far as I can tell, everyone who has purchased this game has been missing some component from the game. In my case, it is the separate sheet, because this information is on a separate card, not in the rule book, of the explanation of what all the factors on the cards and counters are. So, right? I mean, I emailed them, and they're going to send me one. But in the meantime, I'm sitting here punching a cinder block, because it's right now this game is a boat anchor. I can't play this game. Even if I wanted to set this thing up and play it right now, I couldn't, because I don't have that particular card. Is this a personal crisis for me? No, but it's it's a comical problem, and I'm not and I could point out that I have had problems with. At this point, I think I've had a problem with every single wargaming publisher that I've dealt directly with, some problem. But at this point, I've got 300 war games, so that's a factor too. I've had my issues with GMT, where I've had to call them up and complain about something. I've had issues with MMP. I have not done that with Compass, but I have had to email them and request errata materials. I haven't done that with Decision, but I have had to request errata materials that I knew were available. None of these companies are perfect, and it's a is it just a function of we're in a very small niche hobby, and we're in a hobby that skews older, and people who have been in the hobby for a while and who are kind of just used to putting up with certain bullshit that maybe people less entrenched wouldn't be. Does that make sense? I mean, maybe we are too forgiving as customers. Maybe, and I'm not making that as a statement. I'm kind of asking myself the question: should we be far less willing to put up with this than we are? Because by and large we are, right? There, some people and work themselves up into a tizzy over it, but other people, and the majority, I think, won't.
I think he's talking about me again.
No, actually, I'm not.
There are people that will say, "Oh, I don't give a shit." If I got to download some errata and I got to print out a few counters, it don't matter to me. It's no big thing. And then there will be other people that won't accept it. And then there will be people that will go absolutely ballistic over it. You know how people are. It doesn't matter if we're talking wargaming or sports gaming or whatever. Okay.
Right.
I'm just saying companies should stand by their product and make it right for their customers. And if that costs them more money to do that, then they'll change the way they do that. So for example, I'll just give you an example. I ordered, and then we're going to go back to my sports gaming, because I don't want to call out any companies here in wargaming, but as a sports game, there's a sports game called Payoff Pitch, really good system. I bought a bunch of seasons from him and was playing the cards and loving my time with it and did everything, blah, blah, blah. Lo and behold, a couple months go by, I get a package from them, a small little package in the mailbox. And I'm like, I didn't order anything. And I opened it up, and it was like, you had ordered these seasons, and for whatever reason, we missed these cards, so we're shipping them out to you. Here they are. Sorry about the process, blah, blah, blah. And I was like flabbergasted. And I actually did a video on their customer support and service that they went above and beyond, sending out brand new cards because some of the cards were messed up. If GMT is us as customers, if GMT or Compass or MMP or whoever had to send out replacement counters and replacement cards to all of their people that had bought the game and it costs them a lot of money, I bet you they would put a little bit more effort into the quality control they do for their games.
Yeah. I mean, so on the one hand, this kind of blew up the current thing with Imperial Struggle blew up on Facebook. And it's not just Imperial Struggle, by the way. For those who don't know, All Bridges Burning is like just starting to ship. So it's sort of released, but not exactly released yet. And there's already like 3 pages of errata. So there's already errata for Versailles 1919, except that it's secret errata. We know that there are mistakes on the cards, but no errata document has been released by GMT. So, and then there's the Imperial Struggle thing that we've already talked about. So we have what looks like a major collapse of QC at GMT, specifically right now in the last, say, 2 or 3 months. And GMT hadn't really come out and said anything about it until literally this week. I think it was Thursday, they released their monthly update where they said, okay, so we have this plan to release a patch kit that will, give us patches for the map errata, and which might be something else. And then replacement cards for the cards, and that's good. But I would have, clearly the better solution, and I shouldn't need to say this, I think this is self-evident. The better solution is for it not to have come up in the first place, and GMT to not have to call their printer up and say, okay, could you please reprint these components because we screwed them up. That is ultimately costing them money and costing them time and mental space in the management, in the management's heads that I would prefer they not have to deal with.
We're not sitting in GMT's office looking at this, but if you think about it, when people are having problems with their games, all of a sudden we get a lot more emails, which means there's people there that have to reply to those emails, or they got to print those emails out and send them to somebody else to figure out what's going on. Right? And then they're going to get their answer back that, oh, I sent you this, but it wasn't included in the right thing. So then that person's got to track down why that wasn't done that way. There is a whole bunch of stuff that has to happen, all this stuff. Plus, then you got to contact the printer again. You got to send them the right files again. And when you have a mix-up and a screw-up, it's not just, oh, we'll just reprint the counters. There is hundreds of hours of time that you're paying people to actually go through the steps to get that stuff done again.
Yeah. And it all comes down to the failures of project management. It is a project management failure, maybe not of that specific project, but of the company's project management workflow overall.
If I'm developing a card-driven game, my number one priority isn't the map. It's not the counters. It's not the rule books. My number one priority is going to be
probably the cards.
The cards.
Mm-hmm. Well,
we have so many problems with card-driven games where their number one priority should be the cards. Why are they reprinting the cards?
So let's take 2 card-driven games as a sort of case study of this topic and the propensity for mistakes to creep in to the final product. I'm going to use as my example. We'll take Illusions of Glory as one example. And we'll take Worthington Games' release Struggle for Europe, which is strictly speaking a card-driven World War II, World Europe game, right? And we played it. I got a review coming at some point of it. It's not really my thing, but I think it's well designed for what it is. It is about 2 or 3 orders of magnitude less moving pieces in that thing than there is in a Paths of Glory model game, which is, again, Triumph of Chaos here is another game that uses the Paths of Glory system. So it is easier. I feel obliged to point out, without this being an excuse for this to happen, there are so many more moving pieces. Somebody else on my errata video pointed out, well, this doesn't, people, Eurogame customers don't put up with this. It was like, well, dude, did you print the card in blue instead of red? In a lot of cases, some of these games have so many fewer moving parts than a war game would. That it is a lot. Not only is it easier for those kinds of errors to creep in, but it's harder for a disinvolved party who is not entrenched in the ongoing development effort of that game to therefore spot those problems. And that's an issue where you're not going to fix that without a centralized project manager or project management team to do that interfacing and involvement with each independent development team. But that's not an excuse, right? That doesn't fix the problem. We're kind of talking through the dimensions of this issue. That's not a solution, right? That's just an observation.
Right.
So
it's the process needs to change. We're not privy to how it should be done, but we have suggestions. We have thoughts. Your best assets are your communities out there that are more than willing to help on everything. I mean, if you go to the ComSim World forum page and you post messages in there, hey guys, here's the rule, and you list the rule. Do you guys have any questions about this rule? Should we make it a little more clear? You'll have 500 replies back from your customers.
In some cases, that's true. So, I mean, I'm kind of torn in that there is certainly some companies, some publishers could be leveraging their fan bases to a greater extent to help with quality control. And conversely, I feel that some companies are far too dependent on those volunteer communities to be the quality control. But those are companies that I think release fewer problematic titles, right? Problematic in terms of release with disastrous levels of errata. So what I'd like to see happen is for companies to be sufficiently self-sufficient to hire staff to do this kind of thing. I don't know that that's practical or not, but that's what I would like to see.
You are a video gamer, right?
Sure.
So I was very tied closely to several different several different video games out there. Before they release, what happens? You have a community manager that's in charge of their web page, that's in charge of giving out the information to the people, the beta testers, getting information back. So you have beta testers that are helping you with the game. And then you have your community manager, which is taking feedback, sending it forward to the company, and you have that interaction that way.
Yes.
That doesn't work all the time, but it seems like it for computer games seems to be a good process. I'm not saying that maybe that needs to be implemented in art. I'm just thinking there's got to be something, maybe several layer type thing where it's not, if I worked at GMT and they said, Jester, you're in charge of this game. Make sure it comes out right. And it doesn't come out right, it's on me then, right? I'm out. Boom. Get somebody else or whatever. I'm just saying there's got to be something. Somebody has to be held accountable for the company to save the money for all the reprinting and all the time wasted and everything. And the customer feedback that's not going to be very good to the company.
Well, I think this is the problem, though. I think there isn't that intermediate person between the customer and the owner of the company, that there's a specific level that person needs to be at, and that level is vacant in your average war game publisher, and probably board game publisher too, for the most part. Video games are an interesting example because it's an obvious place to look for development models, right? But the reality of it is that the models that you would look at are often you're dealing with orders of magnitude more money, right? Even a nickel dime video game probably costs a couple of $1 million to produce, right? And you can afford to pay a community manager. Maybe you're paying them part-time, but you're paying them something, and you're therefore retaining a nominally professional person to do that interfacing, and you have a QC team. Those people in software development are typically paid very poorly. So that you can, but at the same time, having been somewhat involved in software development, The software never releases completely clean. It doesn't happen. There are things that don't reveal themselves until it hits the populace. Yeah. Right now, there's context here, right? There's disastrous mistakes, and there's a certain level of bugs that we just have to expect, and that's applicable here too. Ultimately, the question to be asked is not how this by us, right? The GMT should be asking the question of how did this happen, but the question to be asked is how does this stop? How do publishers?
How do we prevent this from happening again?
Right, because ultimately it's GMT's responsibility, or MMP, or whoever, their responsibility to fix this, and not ours. All we can do is complain about it, and people do, and it is a gift of the gaming hobby that we are such skilled complainers. So we can laugh about that, but that's not completely valueless either, right?
No, your voice should be the most important thing for your game company. So your voice should be. When you do a bad review of a game, that should reflect badly on the company.
Well, there's reasons. So, as I am not a critic, okay, but I say that knowing what a critic is, and a lot of people that do reviews are reviewers, but not critics. I'll occasionally do reviews. It is possible to criticize. I'm trying not to drag this completely off topic. When we talk about, say, a really good movie critic cannot like a movie, but after having read their review of it, that you will like that movie, right? And that's partly a function of their skill at writing a review, and part of knowing their taste as a consumer of that media. So it's possible to say, hey, I gave this game a bad review, but that doesn't necessarily mean I think it's a total turd. That just means I didn't like it. But you should be able to, as a real critic, can communicate that through the review, right? Which is why I don't consider myself a real critic, because I'm not that good at it, and a good critic is. So, it's not necessarily. This is a separate problem from bad reviews. I think there's people that aren't going to like a game. I mentioned Struggle for Europe from Worthington, right? Which I think is a well-designed game. It's not the kind of game I want to play again, right? Because it's not my thing. I didn't like it. But at the end of it, we were both like, yeah, this is kind of doing exactly what it set out to do. What it is fulfilling the design goals of the designer, and therefore it is a well-designed game, even if it's not to my taste. That's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about games that just released messed up for whatever reason, and that's it's out of our hands, and we can point it out. I would like to, as I thought the message I conveyed in the video was, pay attention to context and don't become personally upset or offended by it, which is what people can tend to do. I don't think that's useful, right? It doesn't necessarily help, but at the same time, and maybe I should have been more explicit about saying this, it is important for us as consumers and us as content creators to point out when things like this happen, so that it can be highlighted to the people who can affect change and try to prevent, or at least minimize, the chances of this kind of thing happening in the future.
And I think that is our goal, right? Our goal is to get it to the point where things like this don't happen in the future. We can look back at the last 5 to 10 to 15 years, and we don't see that change.
Right.
All I'm saying is we just need to, as customers, as game manufacturers, as developers, we need to come up with whatever the process is, create better, more thorough, complete games for everyone to enjoy.
This, by the way, is a tough challenge even for big companies to deal with, by the way. This idea that And it seems it feels very alien inside the context of the gaming publishing sphere. The idea that you should always, no matter how well you think you're doing, you should be working to improve, because you're not, however well you're doing, you're not doing it perfectly. Continuous improvement is a big thing in general industry, and it is something.
That's my number one thing right there.
Yeah, something that I have almost never seen out of a game publisher.
Yes, they should always be striving to do better, and to further their customers and their industry.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one thing that I heard in my sports gaming, and now the number one thing I've heard in my wargaming, is when companies say, well, that's the way we've always done things. That's my biggest number one thing, where a light bulb goes over my head and I say, that company is a problem.
Perhaps you should stay out of certain Content World folders then. Because that exact thing, I have heard that exact thing said. That's just not the way we do things.
I would love to talk with Ardwulf for another 2 hours, but the wife has come in to tell me that my time is over.
Uh-oh.
And dinner has arrived, and I have to sign off. So
well, we'll just have to remember that we have an ongoing conversation, and we'll have to do this again. That's okay. I can make the time. I am free at this time.
Well, it's been a great pleasure talking with you. We got a lot more even to bring up and discuss. These 2 hours went by like they were half an hour. I had a really good time. You have a really good insight on a lot of good information.
And I love talking.
And you love talking, and I love listening and bringing things up. And the more people I can get riled up, the better everything's going to be.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope so.
All right, guys. Well, thank you all for coming on down tonight. Terrence and Heathwell and Sparling69, Wardrobe, Rough Sportsman, Wargamer. Thanks for coming out. Jaza1. Wow, we got a lot of people that came out. Tony's Board Life. Be sure to check out that wonderful channel. Of course, if you guys are new, make sure you check out Ardwulf Lair and his channel. Last thing, what's coming up on your channel maybe this week or?
So I've finally flushed out all of the old, except for like 2 more that will come out this week. The old unboxings. So I have a new round of fancier unboxings that will be appearing. I've actually started doing a playthrough video, like an edited, curated playthrough video series of Soviet Dawn, which is a States of Siege game. I picked it because it was an interesting topic, and I had it, and it showed up, and it's real manageable. And as you pointed out, it's a lot of work to actually put this kind of thing together. So it's a 3-episode series for the whole playthrough. Episode 2 comes out on Monday, and episode 3 will follow. And then hopefully by the week after that, I will have the next series in the pipeline, which will not be Triumph of Chaos. I'll tell you that. I actually have a plan for that. That's one of the games in the pile here. But yeah, playthrough video of The Mission, which is about Jesus. So, or later, this is the sequel to Jesus. But it's an interesting looking game, and it's another Solitaire States of Siege derivative system. So we'll do that. We hope to get the Victory Games Vietnam thing done on Sunday. Tomorrow is today Saturday.
Today is Saturday.
Tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. So tune in for that. Hopefully it will happen. We've had scheduling issues, so we'll hopefully be able to get that worked out.
All right, just look them up on the YouTube. Just type in Ardwulf Lair. You'll be able to find the channel. Go subscribe and leave lots of comments and let them know that you got a chance to check them out here on our channel. So thanks for coming on by, and we'll see everyone later. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.